Last but never least, to talk about South Asians in global corporations, of which he is the individual personification, is my friend Mr. Pradeep Pant. Pradeep Pant is president of Kraft Foods Asia Pacific. He heads the Kraft Food organization across 15 countries in the Asia Pacific region and has over 30 years of experience in the FMCG industry. He is an expert in building businesses in both mature and emerging markets, and he has managed a wide range of iconic brands across some of the world's fastest growing and complex emerging markets, including India, Russia, Turkey, and Southeast Asia. I won't read the rest because you would have seen him on CNBC regularly, so let him now say what he would like to say.
Thank you, Sat Pal. Good afternoon, everyone. When Mr. Gopinath Pillai spoke with me about this conference, the question he threw at me is, so what makes leaders, corporate leaders from South Asia so successful in global corporations? And as I started wrestling with this question, the first thing that became clear to me was that the story that I know best is the Indian story. So a lot of the learnings that I'm going to share with you are from the success stories of some of the Indians I know. The second thing was that the easy way to answer this question was to do what everyone does today: Google search, find out what the people are saying, put it together, synthesize it, and present it. So instead of that, I decided that I will talk to friends of mine. And I decided to speak to 8 friends of mine who are the personification of success in global corporations. And Piyush, of course, is sitting here amongst us. But I have many, many friends who've arrived. But if you look down the list, Ajay Banga, CEO of MasterCard today, global CEO, used to work for me in Nestle 25 years ago. Ivan Menezes was a young management trainee in Nestle. He is today the head of CEO of North America for Diageo, chairman of Asia, and chairman of Latin America. Shumit Banerjee, CEO of Booz & Company. Piyush has had an illustrious career in Citibank and now is the CEO of DBS. Nandu has just started sitting on the executive board of Nestle, looking after Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Ramu is the president of the stock exchange here. Again, did very well in Nestle and Citibank. Harish Manwani is the COO, recently appointed COO of Unilever, based here. And Sanjay Khosla, the president of developing markets for Kraft Foods. So quite an illustrious bunch. And what I did was I spoke to these guys. I know these people for years. And I spoke to them and I said, so guys, tell me, what makes you tick? What is it that's made you successful? And I'll share with you some of the findings. First, before I got into what makes them successful, the question I asked them was, do you really believe that the people from South Asia are more successful than people from other developing markets? And the answer, both from anecdotally as well as statistically, is an emphatic yes. In about 1/5 of the Fortune 500 companies, non-Indian companies, there are 8 companies out there which are Indian. The non-Indian companies, there are people from India sitting at the leadership table. And that's a really stunning piece of statistic. And anecdotally, you know the story as well as I do. The early starters, as far as people from India and South Asia were concerned, were the US companies. They cottoned on to the act pretty early in the game that this was a great pool of talent which they could utilize globally in other places. And we'll see why. The European companies are fast catching up, indeed have caught up in many ways. Harish, Nandu, the names you saw there, are heading up European companies. The success of these people started accelerating as the importance of emerging markets started becoming bigger and bigger. the people I'm going to talk about are corporate leaders who started their careers in the 70s and 80s. And today, a lot of them are sitting at the top tables in the Fortune 500 companies. So what is the basic DNA of these guys? What's the basic DNA of these folks? First, this was the first post-independence generation of corporate leaders coming out of the educational machinery in India. These were guys born in the 50s, maybe early 60s, went to school, went to college, passed out of their institutions, educational institutions in the mid-70s to early 80s, and have developed their careers since. Most of these folks, with the exception of one on my list, completed their higher education in India, engineering, management graduation, etc. They all completed their higher education within India. Only some went abroad early. Now that's an interesting fact. All of these people, without exception, are middle-class folks with very strong middle-class values, with a very strong middle-class upbringing. And that gives them a foundation which is solid. They have a very good sense of how to operate within institutions, within structures, how to operate within the authority of teachers in school, college, the legal machinery within the country, a democratic structure in the country, bureaucracy, etc., etc., and yet learn how to push the boundaries to get the maximum out. So going back to school, I know definitely that all the 8 guys and myself that we spoke to, everyone out there jumped the school wall and went to the zoo to have a cigarette. We know this. Push the boundary. But they operated within the bounds because when the teachers came down on us, we weren't disrespectful. We weren't arrogant. So this is a bunch of people who were hungry, who were very, very competitive, had fire in the belly, have fire in the belly as we speak today, but are not arrogant and are highly self-aware people. I don't know how many of these folks, not only these 8 guys, but how many of these folks, when we were sitting and having a drink together and ruminating about the good old days, how many of them have said on more than one occasion, wow, we never thought we would do so well in life. That underlying humility is ubiquitous. It's right through this generation of folks. Their typical career paths were they joined big corporations pretty early in the game. The big corporations came and picked them up because they were coming out of fine institutions, all of them. At some stage in their careers, they recognized the fact that opportunities at home were somewhat limited. They weren't really going to become big because the scale of these companies back at home in those days wasn't huge. They took a leap of faith and they went where the opportunity was. Whether it took them to another town, out of their hometown, to another country, in a different discipline, didn't matter. They went out. They delivered results, they demonstrated leadership. And their careers accelerated as the developing markets, the emerging markets, started coming of age. Let's look at some of their key traits. All these folks who are now successful leaders are extremely comfortable with ambiguity. We have all operated almost through our careers with incomplete information. We have had the guts to take a leap of partial information and go intuitively at problems. We have lived with poor infrastructure. If you flash back to the kind of infrastructure that existed, still exists in most of a country like India or any of the countries in South Asia, you take roads, banking, railways, ports, information movement, it's weak. Despite all that, successful organizations have been built and successful careers have been built. The rules are ever changing. There are 49 forms to be filled. There are state-level hassles, there are country-level hassles, there are inter-department problems. Living with these was a way of life. Complexity was huge, but it was tackled. And operating in the gray zone was very, very normal for all these people, but resting on those solid middle-class values. And they understood each one of these folks understood the concept of jugaad very, very early in life. How to get it done despite everything. How not to be a victim of the circumstances around you, but how to operate within a given construct.